Well, good morning, and thank you all so much for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. There'll be a few more folks that'll join us for our meeting in the next few minutes or so. Just wanted to remind folks of our usual instructions. We're going to be asking you to do some introductions in the chat in a moment. I'll give you a quick question to answer. If you can turn on your cameras, please do. Mute when you're not speaking and post comments in the chat. I'm going to ask you to put in the chat your name, pronouns, your organization affiliation, and if you could spend a week somewhere in the world, where would you go? If you could spend a week somewhere in the world, where would you go? All right. You want to put that in the chat, name, pronouns, organization affiliation. Put title in there as well so folks kind of know what you do, where you are, and a place in the world you would spend a week. Please put it in the chat. Panama, like it. Thank you. And Jenna, if we could get rid of the slide for a moment. I see Bermuda, always Italy. All right. Costa Rica, Kenya. Wonderful. All right. The Jersey Shore. Somewhere in Paris and Finland. Finland, all right. That's awesome. I haven't seen that one before. Good stuff. Nice, London, Patagonia, South Africa, Morocco. Morocco's got a big game tonight. The Virgin Islands, Japan, a lot of Italy, India, Bali. Pooja, I'm with you on that one. Denmark, but I read it as Worcester, and I was like, a week in Worcester, of course, why not? Paris, of course. Mexico City is amazing. Thank you for that one. Love it. Lake House in Vermont, with you. All right. Aruba. Yeah. Aruba probably feels really good right now. Africa, Australia, Thailand. I think Italy's getting the most votes today. We got a second for Aruba. That'll work. All right. Bora Bora. Wonderful. We'll give it another 10 seconds or so, see if anybody else. Remember, name, title, organization, pronouns, and where you would spend a week. Vietnam, Iceland, Barbados. Sandra, you from Christchurch? Iceland.
No, but I love it there.
All right. Good stuff. St. Martin. All right. Leah, I like St. Martin also. One of my favorite places to vacation. Which side of the island do you like best?
I believe it's the Dutch side.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. I'm definitely on the Dutch side. Awesome. Neighborhood villages. Elizabeth, you're from neighborhood villages, or would you spend a week in neighborhood villages? Just want to be sure I get it right. All right, let's wrap up. Thank you all so much. We got some Ireland in there as well. I think Italy won this one, but we'll check in next time. Thank you all so much for those introductions and where you would like to spend a week. I'm going to pass it over to Amy.
Thanks, Mo. And it's so great to see so many folks. We are here in working group 3, and we just wanted to share some news. Save the date. As you know, this is a product, a process, a partnership, and a product. And this product of the Early Childhood Agenda, where we're going to talk about our priorities for the, next session. We are going to have a public release on Tuesday, January 24th. At 11 o'clock in the morning at the Massachusetts State House. We have not been to the State House as a group since our advocacy day in March 2020. So we are so excited to have this opportunity to be together. We will be inviting Governor Healy, Governor-elect Healy, Lieutenant Governor-elect Kim Driscoll, members of the administration, legislature, and the agency folks, as well as the field. So start planning now. We want to talk and think about how we can get folks there, how we can make this accessible. But we will send more information soon, but just save the date on your calendar now. And I will turn things over to Marissa.
Thanks, Amy. So this is just a little bit more about the event releases on the last slide. So Amy covered it great there. Just we're really excited to see everyone, and we're going to be posting a couple message boards in Basecamp asking for some of those accessibility resources, what would be helpful for you all to make sure that you can be there on that day. So one of the semi-obvious things that we've talked about so far is transportation. So really wanting to make sure that we can get everyone out from the 413 and from Western Mass into Boston for the day as well. I'll ride that bus. Thank you, Sheila. I was kind of jealous that I wouldn't be on that bus, to be honest, because that sounds pretty fun. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about a survey and facilitation guide. So these are going to be posted later today, and we have the two previews here, and I'm going to turn it over to Jenna and Neri, who can talk a little bit about the survey, and then I will go through the facilitation guide. So I will turn it over to Jenna.
Thanks, Marissa. So like Marissa said, the survey is going to be sent out later today. And what we are doing is the meetings that we've had so far, we've identified challenges and problem statements. And today we're moving towards the solutions. With the survey, we're going to be sending it out and try to have a broader reach to get feedback on those identified challenges or problem statements that we've all worked together to identify. And what we're looking for is feedback from external audiences, so families, your personal as well as your professional networks, having a larger reach on the whole early child community. And what we're going to do over the next 2 weeks is take that feedback from the survey and then incorporate it into the solutions that we are moving towards identifying starting today. And the survey is going to be translated. It's going to be available in English. It's going to be translated into a few other languages. Neri, I'm going to check in with you about which languages that we're going to translate it into.
Yeah, sure. So we are working with one of our partners to get this translated into 6 languages: Spanish, Portuguese, French, and Haitian Creole, Portuguese, and Cape Verdean Creole, Vietnamese, Chinese. And I feel like I'm missing one, but Arabic, yes. I will post it in the chat what languages those are. And then also if you need the survey translated into an additional language, just send us an email so we can make that happen. But basically we chose those languages based on your feedback on Basecamp. And then also what we know of the state of Massachusetts and what the general language needs are. There's going to be a flyer and there's going to be a survey on SurveyMonkey. It's all electronic though. So we would really love your help in getting the word out to your communities and getting folks to participate once the survey opens.
Thanks, Neri. All right, and then the second resource that we have is this facilitation guide. And the purpose of the facilitation guide is really to support partners who are gathering feedback in groups. So if any of you have upcoming meetings where you're either in person or virtual in the next few weeks, we wanted to be able to provide a resource that would help you just slot out a couple minutes during the meeting time to really ask for feedback on these agenda challenges. So the facilitation guide will also be available today. The way it's designed is that it really just guides you through, it sort of mirrors many of the activities and many of the conversations that we've had through the early childhood agenda over the past few months, and provides a space to gather that feedback in a group setting and then to sort of take notes in the survey itself. So the primary sort of response that we're looking for is through the survey. And then what we've also done with the facilitation guide is, knowing that translating it into 6 or 7 languages will be helpful, but that there may be additional language needs that we haven't translated. So what we're trying to do there is that if you are meeting in sort of these group settings, to host the language in the preferred or host the meeting in the preferred language of the group, and then to take notes directly into the survey itself in English and translate that back to us. So to really sort of reach consensus as a group, to talk through the different principles and to send that feedback back to the early childhood agenda. And as Neri and Jenna both shared, that we are going to be incorporating this feedback over the next 2 weeks. So today we're really just beginning this process and starting to brainstorm some potential solutions and to think about what sort of the next phase of this agenda will look like. And then we'll incorporate everyone's feedback over the next 2 weeks and make sure that, you know, if we're receiving overwhelming feedback, that we're on the right track, that the challenges that we've identified seem like they are the ones that we should be prioritizing. That's great. If we get feedback that says like, you might be missing a thing or two here, there's something that is really important in this category that you should consider, that we'll bring that back to the group and we'll talk about incorporating that into the final product. All right. And I am going to turn it over to Amy now, who can share just one example. I think you can go back one actually, Jenna, who's going to share one example of how a partner is going to be hosting a conversation in the next few weeks for parents and caregivers' perspectives on childcare solutions. So I will turn that over to Amy.
Thanks so much, Marissa. And I think one of the things that we've talked a lot about internally is we are already seeing evidence of all this work paying off, of having these conversations, of identifying the problems, and then thinking about solutions. And so Ginny Hamilton, I know that you are on and would love to turn it over to you. We have, Ginny will tell us about Essentials for Early Childhood, and then what they're doing next week on December 14th. We're co-sponsoring an event with them. And it really is a great example of just how somebody who is sitting in their day job thinking, or one of their day jobs, thinking about how to make these connections, how to amplify and connect the work that's already happening, and then how do we kind of working together in the same direction and for the same goal. So Ginny, I'll turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about the event on December 14th.
Thanks, Amy. So yes, I'm Ginny Hamilton. I work with Massachusetts Essentials for Childhood as a co-coordinator of our economic opportunity team. And that, as Amy jokes, that is part-time for me. I work, this project is funded by the Center for Disease Control. It is funded through Massachusetts Department of Public Health and is working with DPH and child welfare organizations in Mass. Everyone involved in the project is committed to promoting safe, stable, and nurturing environments for children and families. So at its basis, it's around preventing child abuse and neglect. In the Massachusetts project, we're really looking at the necessity of collective solutions, economic solutions, beyond focusing on individual behavioral change. So that's where our involvement, my involvement in this coalition comes, and our work with strategies come from, because we recognize that the childcare choices that families are making are affecting the level of stress that they're under and their ability to care for their children, both in terms of economic supports and emotional supports. So this past spring, Sarah Savage from the Fed, whose video we just saw on the 9:30 call, Sarah was interviewing working moms about the choices that they made, how their childcare choices and work choices were affected during the pandemic. And so we've wanted to bring her back to talk about this issue and have that event happening next Wednesday night, the 14th. And that just dovetailed so perfectly with the early childhood agenda, because we're hearing directly from parents about what their experiences are, what the choices are they're making, how that's affecting their economics, how that's affecting their families and their children. Because, you know, too many times we bring parents, we as advocates bring parents in to validate our pre-cooked agendas, rather than having parents or any people directly affected participating in the agenda's creation. So that's what this effort is working to address through the early childhood agenda, and by involving families and amplifying their priorities. So by partnering with strategies on this event, this seemed like the perfect time to bring this information together. So Sarah's going to present her findings. The event is 7 to 8:15. It's going to be about a 20-minute presentation. And then we're going to use this structure of ones and twos and threes, break into smaller groups. We have parent facilitators leading those groups to capture what resonates along with these priorities and feed that information back through the system into this whole process. So I'm really pleased to be able to build together on this front. I'm asking folks to please share the invitations widely. We have same languages actually that is already being worked here in terms of invitations are available in 7 languages. We will definitely have English, Spanish, and Portuguese available on the call that night. And then if there are requests for other languages, we will do our best to get interpreters involved for that. So please register, please come, and particularly for those of you who work directly with families, please share the invitations so that we can get the word out more widely. And I think that's it. Thanks for letting me do a plug here, Amy.
Thank you, Jenny. And I put the information that you shared on the 9:30 call in the chat here. There are invitations in different languages. There is an RSVP link. We also shared the, I just shared the link to the video that we saw that the Federal Reserve also put together that really highlights the story of 4 moms thinking about non-traditional hours and care. And we know that all those issues have come up in our challenge statements about the work that we're doing together. So thank you, Jenny, and thanks to everybody who has helped really start making these connections when we think about policy, practice, and research. We're just seeing the evidence of this work together and then the opportunity and kind of potential that we have as we kind of continue along this process. So I will turn things back to Marissa.
Thanks, Amy. All right, so when we get back into the slides, we're going to talk quickly about the game board. So just review what we have queued up for today and then what we have sort of looking ahead. So I saw one question in the chat about the deadline for the survey, and I think that's actually a great transition into what we're doing now. So we have our meeting today on December 6th, and then the next meeting is on December 20th. So we've set sort of the deadline for the feedback from the survey for December 20th. On December 20th, we're really going to be working to solidify what those solutions are, sort of similar to our last meeting where we were really solidifying what the challenges were. We'll do that, and then we'll have another sort of 2-week period for feedback on those solutions following that date, where we can get feedback from sort of the wider early childhood community. The other thing I wanted to highlight on here is stewardship. So we may have referenced a couple other times the data team, the stewardship team, and the communications team, all of which are going to sort of complement the work of the working groups in developing this actual product, the agenda. And what we're going to be doing with the stewardship team is we're really going to begin the process today where we're asking you to identify potential solutions and then to think about lead advocates. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but we'll use that list to sort of zoom in on who's doing work in these spaces, who is aligned with some of the priorities that we've highlighted and that we're prioritizing, the solutions that we're prioritizing, and to make those connections so that we have a smaller group that can meet through January. So for probably 3 weeks in January and then through the spring and into the summer to really pull this all together. So you can pop over to the next slide, Jenna. So we've talked a lot about the process for the early childhood agenda, and action is sort of the last component of this. So how can we provide those tailored next steps after we have this event release in January? So when we're thinking about the legislative session, when we're thinking about the budget and advocacy related to all of that, engagement with state departments. Next slide. So what we're going to be doing on the stewardship team is to have this smaller group of around 15 members where we want to coordinate and plan for the action part of the agenda. So thinking about any legislation that needs to be filed, thinking about the fiscal year, budget through the state, thinking about any philanthropic investment opportunities, engagement with local and state partners, and engagement with the new administration. So a smaller group where we can really pull all this together and guide the strategy of the early childhood agenda moving forward, sort of in between when our last meeting ends in December and then when we reconvene the group again next year. In terms of membership, what we're going to be looking for is 2 representatives who are really the content experts from each working group. So it'll be a slower transition. I think it'll take a couple weeks for us to sort of see that rise to the top. But as we begin identifying solutions today, and once we narrow in on what those priority solutions are, we'll be able to point to that solution and say, who is doing work in this space, who would be a really good fit to carry this work forward. So that's sort of the beginning of our task for today. We're also going to be looking for 2 representatives from the early childhood workforce, so someone who is directly working with children and families every day. And we really want those 2 representatives to represent different parts of the early childhood workforce. So we know that we've talked a lot about how this conversation has been leaning a little bit early education and care, so really wanting to think about other members of the early childhood workforce who may not be part of that early education and care system. And then finally, 2 representatives of family voice. So really making sure that we have that family voice perspective represented on the stewardship team. And then we're going to, at our next meeting, share out a draft list of this stewardship membership. And that will be based off of everyone's feedback today in the group maps, which I'll share a little bit about in a minute. So this list will be developed based on the solutions and the lead advocates that are added to the activity today. And we're going to be looking at weekly meetings in January just to really shore up the actual product and get ready for the event release in the end of January. And then looking at monthly meetings from January through August. So to talk a little bit about what we plan to do today. So today is really about transitioning from problem statements to solutions, which we know everyone was really excited to do at the last meeting. So I'm hoping that this one goes over well. And we're going to be, the objective of our meeting today is not to finalize anything, it's just to begin the process. So to begin to identify solutions for each of the working groups' identified challenges. And we're going to continue to add to this list throughout the next couple of weeks. And we're also going to incorporate the feedback from the survey and the facilitation guide over the next couple of weeks. So there will be some shifting and some moving around. But to keep the process going, we have to kind of move on to the next step and begin the solutions conversation to begin to identify some of those solutions. We're in a couple minutes, we're going to transition into our working groups, but for now, just to share that the group map activity has 2 different rows. So the top row has each of the challenges that we've identified for the working group. And then the bottom row has a space for lead advocates or state partners. So what we're trying to do here is add potential solutions for each of the challenges by clicking on the plus sign and sort of adding in brainstorming solutions. And then for the bottom row, for each potential solution that you suggest, please consider who's doing work in that space. So if we, I will use the example I've used a couple times. So the earned income tax credit has come up a few times. So if that's one of the sort of potential solutions that comes up in the Financially Secure Families group, we know that there's an earned income tax coalition, so that there is a group of organizations that are working to push that work forward. So we're trying to really make the real-time connection between what's happening now, what's sort of already in motion, already like happening. And then there may be also some solutions that are identified where there's no work happening, where we know that there's sort of a need there. And that's really valuable information too. So if you come up with some sort of a creative solution or something that we know that hasn't really been started in Massachusetts yet, that's very exciting. And it's good for us to know that no one's really has ownership over that yet. And that's something that the early childhood agenda as sort of a collective can talk about and can think through who should really be pushing that forward as the lead advocate over the next few months. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mo, who can help us transition into our working groups.
All right, thank you so much, Marissa. And I'm just going to ask our Strategies for Children folks to go ahead and go to your work group stations, and then we'll be sending our audience over to you. Just to make sure that folks are familiar, we're going to give you the new link for your work group, because the work group links are specific to the date. So do not use an old work group link. All right, use the one that we are giving to you today. We'll do this one at a time, or one work group at a time. And I just want to thank everyone for your participation in this meeting, but also for going on Basecamp and adding so much to the process. It's been really amazing to have this much participation. So